Hello, 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 and welcome to Unique Leaders Live. It's my favorite day of the week. It's Friday, not because of the weekend, but because it's Unique Leaders Live. And I get a chance to visit with amazing people that share their story with us. They say that success leaves clues. Well, I don't love clues. I like to know the story. The story is in their success, rather, is in the story. And so every week we share another Unique Leaders Live story. And from the beginning of their lives through today, you can glean that story and that information. And I know that you will see yourself in this, and it will help you meander through life and understand the why of things. So I want you to share this out because there are other people that you know that will be blessed by James Smith's story. So do that for me. I truly, truly would appreciate it. It is live on YouTube as well. And by Tuesday, it's going to be a podcast on all the podcasting platforms. So just know that you can share this out and just help others attain that information that will help their lives. So without further ado, I'd like you to meet my guest today, James Smith. Hello, James.
Hi, Megan. How are you?
I'm blessed to have you with me, James. So happy to have you here.
Well,
So
thank you
as
so much.
my pleasure. As I shared in the intro that, we're going to just have a time together to really explore you and your journey of life. And it truly, the goal of this is really to help people see that everyone is in this together and we all have many, many similarities. This Unique Leaders Live, James, started last year in April during the lockdown. And I knew that it's sharing people's stories would be something that people would enjoy. And I asked, because we're all home and we're all in it together. And at that time, a friend of mine who was a videographer was sharing that she was on Facebook, was sharing that she was starting a directory for alternative practitioners, medical practitioners. I said, hey, maybe that people would enjoy hearing about that. So I asked her if she'd like to join us, and she came on. And what was so interesting is people loved it. The response was great. And so as time went on, we have done a year over actually of Unique Leaders Live. So that's a testimony to us and my assistant, Elizabeth. So I'm just very blessed to have you here today and to share your story. So with that, why don't you go back to young James, where you grew up, and what things went on in your life, in your formative years, that essentially set the traction for the rest of your life?
Sure. So I was born in a town about 45 miles west of Fort. I was actually born in Fort Worth, but I grew up in a town west of Fort Worth, about 45 miles, called Springtown.
Okay.
It was typical small town Texas town, some ranchers, a little bit of farmers, but most everybody had a trade. And my father worked, he built airplanes for then General Dynamics. I think now the name is Lockheed. And that's where I grew up at. So I had, when I say small, I'm talking 1,600 people in the town.
Small.
So very small living. We didn't travel as a family. I didn't really know much about, our other states or parts of the world, compared to what I learned in school. But at the same time, I love the small town feel, but it did not foster in me the desire to go and do it. It kind of kept me from, I was nervous to go out and go travel and do things. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to ask you. So I shared with you that I moved to Texas in 1987 and lived in Fort Worth. And General Dynamics was a big deal in Fort Worth, Texas.
Oh, yeah.
Big deal. And so your father worked for General Dynamics, but he was not in the military?
So, yeah, my father was in the Navy during the Vietnam era, and he did not retire from the military, didn't make it a career, and got out. He was actually, when I was born, my father was a working cowboy. He worked at the stockyards there in downtown Fort Worth, which are pretty much all gone now. So I can remember going with him to the pens and he would be working cattle, and I would be hanging out with these old cowboys that were telling me stories of free range cowboy stuff, that was passed down from them. So it was a really cool time now that I look back on it. Of course, as I was growing up, I had dreams of going to play Division I football, and like most kids do in Texas, most boys do. And then I was kind of told by my doctor, my pediatrician, in probably like 8th grade, "Hey, you're done growing, buddy. That's not going to happen." So, but anyways, that's just kind of a little tidbit. But I guess going back to living in Springtown, it was a great place to grow up. I have friends there that I still love, and of course, I still call it home. But for me, I wanted something different. And I didn't really know what that was. I knew I didn't want to continue on with college. I was done with school. I was kind of tired of that. And my grandfather was a veteran of World War II, and my dad, of course, served during the Vietnam era. So I wanted to go ahead and try the Army out. So I broke the mold. They were both Navy men, and then so they were kind of mad at me. My dad and I still get heated about that Army-Navy game every year. But anyway, I joined the Army right before I graduated high school. They have a program called the Delayed Entry Program. So I signed the paperwork when I was 17. My parents had to sign for me also, basically sign my life away. They didn't know what was going to happen. And I left right after graduating high school.
Wow.
Yep.
Now, did they, like you said, you signed your life away and you're 17 and that's young. Did they have any, did they feel and did they display that verbally to you that should not, it was too soon, you shouldn't do that? Or were they really 100% behind you?
I think they were 100% behind me. I remember my mother, before she signed her name, she looked at me. It was my mother, my father, the recruiter, and myself at the kitchen table. And she said, "If you do this, you're not coming home. Like, you're not quitting. If you're signing this paper, you're sticking through it." And I said, "Yeah, exactly. That's what I want." So she went ahead and signed. And after that, and further on in my career, my mother always supported me. And it wasn't until recent she told me how much of a toll it took on her.
I'm sure. I asked that question from a mother's standpoint. I mean, 17, oh my goodness, most parents are taking their kid to, the dorm and,
Right.
and hoping for the best with that, because I remember that experience. But to sign, your life away is a great way to put it because you just don't know. Yeah.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So continue on, sir.
Sure. So joined the Army right after high school, and I'm red-green colorblind, so I did not get my pick of jobs that I wanted initially. I had to go into a role of communications. So I had a communications job, which was more of a support role, and I wanted to be more combat arms. So this is where God starts jumping in at for me. I always desired to go try to be an Army Green Beret, U.S. Army Special Forces soldier. And I didn't know anything. I really didn't know anything, even after I joined the military, other than the cartoon G.I. Joe and Rambo. I didn't know anything about these guys. So I'd been in the Army for 2 years. My first duty station was Fort Carson, Colorado. And then I went to South Korea for 1 year. When I was leaving Korea, when it was right before my time to leave, I got orders to go to 5th Special Forces Group at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, as that support role, doing that support job. And I was terrified. I remember thinking, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to be surrounded by these, gigantic dudes with granite jaws and just, broad and just huge, and it's going to be bad." So I got there, and I was there for about 2.5 years in that role. But I worked hand in hand with fellow Special Forces soldiers. And as I got to know them, they said, "Hey, man, we kind of think you're the guy that we're looking for. Have you considered going to Special Forces assessment and selection?" Or we just call it selection. Okay. But anyways, I basically got the courage up to go do that. And I still thank those gentlemen today for, planting that seed in me and saying, "Hey, we see something in you that's bigger than what you're doing," which that's pretty big how I've had people do that along the way for me. So I'm very blessed. So anyhow, I went to selection. This was right around the end of 1998, and I got selected. And that's a whole nother episode. I'm just going to breeze over that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I eventually that next spring, I reported to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, to start, and then I ended up completing the Special Forces Qualification Course as a 18 Echo in Army vernacular, which is a Special Forces Communications Sergeant.
So let me stop you for a minute. So
sure.
For our listeners' benefit, in the big picture of the Army, how many people go through this selection? How many people are with you? Not just there, but meaning in the big picture of that division or area of the Army.
Sure. So the Army Special Forces, the last number that I remember seeing on open source is about 10% of the United States Army.
10%.
That's not Rangers. That's not Delta Force. That's just solely U.S. Army Special Forces. So for instance, my selection class, we probably started around 350. Mm-hmm. And I want to say maybe like 100 or so got selected. Mm-hmm. And that's just to start the training. So you go through that piece just to, and you're assessed physically and mentally, and you have psychologists you talk to. I mean, it's a whole of, they check you out from top to bottom, and they make sure that you're someone that can handle the job, can handle the demands, mm-hmm. And all that stuff. So it's a big deal. I mean, you have physical studs that go through this thing and they just don't get selected because they're just not what the regiment's looking for.
Right. It's more a mental and emotional strength that they're looking for.
I think it's just resilient. If you had to tie it to one word, it would just be resiliency.
Okay. Well, that's a good word. That's a great character trait, being resilient, not giving up. It's one of my most important, factors of, looking at and, growing and training and educating people. It's that resiliency. So, okay. So you're now in North Carolina.
Yep.
And you're just finishing up that and being chosen.
Right. So I was chosen, and then fast forward another year and a half when I was in we call it the Q course. It's the Special Forces Qualification Course. Mm-hmm. So when I received my Special Forces tab and I was able to wear my Green Beret, I left Fort Bragg and I reported to 5th Special Forces Group, which is at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And for those that don't know, it's about an hour, kind of really west of Nashville, just maybe a little southwest of Nashville. Okay. But so it's right on the Tennessee-Kentucky border. Okay. And this was right at the end of the year 2000. Mm-hmm. And I was the brand new guy. So I was the brand new guy, but I had a little ace in the hole. I was a brand new guy that reported back to my same unit that I was a support guy in a couple years before. So those SF soldiers that, encouraged me to go through the process, some of them were still there and they received me, and I was taken under their wing. I got a little more tutelage than a lot of the new guys do.
Right.
So another, right. Yeah. So mm-hmm. Another blessing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you were there in Fort Campbell during 9/11?
Well, actually, I was deployed overseas in Kyrgyzstan when 9/11 occurred. The day before I knew what had happened, I was sitting. We were training. We were a mountain team, so we were training our partner force how to climb. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting at a transition point. So I was basically sitting on a shelf. About 400, 500 feet up. And I was just making sure that when the guys were coming through, they took one piece of protection off, climbing protection, and put it on the new rope before they took, the other off the old rope. So I was just making sure they were safe. Mm-hmm. And I had an amazing day. I got to talk to so many of those guys. I looked down, there was a beautiful stream running down. I mean, it was the most gorgeous setting in the world. And then we get back to the hotel and our intelligence sergeant comes running up to us. He was a veteran from Operation Gothic Serpent, which was the Black Hawk Down incident.
Yes.
So he had already been through combat, and I remember he came running in, grabbing us because he was going to give us a just an open source intelligence briefing. But he looked at me and said, "Hey, if you're not ready or if you don't know, we're going to war. This is us." And that was that was a life-changing moment for me.
Absolutely. A sobering moment in your life.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Wow. So did you stay in Afghanistan, or did you come back to the States after that?
Yeah. So long story. I'll try to condense it. We came back to Fort Campbell, did some preparation, talked to some folks, and then we got to head back over to Afghanistan, or actually we were in a neighboring country. And I was lucky enough to be part of the first pushback against the Taliban and Al Qaeda, and our enemy. My Pearl Harbor is what I took of it. So I wasn't on the ground. I didn't go on the ground in those initial days, but I did support from a neighboring country, and it was great to see the stuff that our guys got to do on the ground. It was really amazing.
Support. It was, so you were a support to what was going on, and then going into Iraq.
Right. Yeah. So we were doing a support role there. We were there for roughly 8-9 months, and then we came back home, and we started unofficially preparing for what became Operation Iraqi Freedom.
I see. Wow. And so then what happened?
Yeah. So fast forward. We're in the western desert of Iraq, and we just crossed over the border, and we were in Iraq. So I had invaded my first country as 28 years old, small kid from small town Texas who was told he wasn't going to play Division I football, and I remember because we crossed over at night. So we had to stop and fill our vehicles up. We had our team. We had 4 vehicles. Each vehicle had about 3 guys in it, and I was the driver for my vehicle. So I was in charge of maintenance and making sure that the fuel was up to snuff and nothing was wrong with it. So when we stopped, the other 2 guys pulled security for me while I filled the vehicle up, and it was daylight. It was getting dark, light enough where you could see. And we were in a farmer's field, and it was like any farmer's field you could think of. And it was a very poignant moment, because I thought, whoa, I'm in a country where people don't want me to be here right now. And we haven't even I don't see anybody right now, but this is eventually something's gonna happen, So it was, I'd heard the stories from what happened with the guys in Afghanistan, and then here we go, we're getting ready to get into it. And fast forward, 3 or 4 weeks, and we were relatively done with that mission. So they brought us back to our neighboring base where we were stationed at, and then from there we headed home, not really knowing what was going to happen. And then, don't you know it? Like 5 months later, we're back in Baghdad again. So that's where my operational tempo and my colleagues' tempo just went skyrocketing from there. So,
now, would you say that before you go into being in Baghdad, do you feel that? I mean, I'm listening to you, and my mind is thinking about, like you said, the small guy from small town Texas who was told in 8th grade you couldn't play Division I football, and here you are in the middle of, or the beginning stages, but then going into the heated middle of it all. And you said something poignantly, that you're in a country that people don't want. I was visualizing you, and all of thousands of other yous, right? Meaning I'm not just talking about Special Forces, but being in the Army and there. And I was then thinking about what you said about people not wanting you in their country. You know, it was a farm. And, you know, we live in Texas, so there's a lot of ranch and farm. I was thinking about how these poor people all over the world, we all just are minding our own business, and life takes place around us. It's just so, there's so many thoughts about it. But, you know, I mean, how much, when you were in the whole Army structure, did you interface with many local people?
Oh yeah, for sure. That's kind of our bread and butter. Is we during the whole qualification course, we go through language training, we get culture training, and then we stay abreast of that. We try to stay as current as we can, which, in all honesty, is a challenge in itself, because even before 9/11 kicked off, even before you know, we had the global war on terror or any other big conflict, Special Forces soldiers are gone a lot. They're deployed quite a bit for training and individual training, and then collective stuff as well. So it's very hard to put that in the calendar and to be able to stick with it. But we do our best. So that's one of the things we do, is we work by, with, and through. So yeah, you definitely need to build a relationship with. If I'm in your neighborhood, I'm going to get to know who you are.
And the same difference, though, as you just said that, I'm thinking to myself, you said you were a 28-year-old man. And so it's very difficult on families and life, because you're gone so much, like you said. So it's not an easy life on any level.
Not at all. I wasn't married when we invaded Iraq, but of course, you know, I mentioned my mother a minute ago. My mother and father. When I say I grew up in the model home, I really did. I mean, my parents are amazing. And I remember getting to call my parents we had a satellite phone, and it was about a week and a half in. So they knew they're watching the news. They know we've been in, and they just know that no news is good news. That's why I told them. So when I called, I remember my mom. When you're on a satellite phone, it sounds like you're talking, you know, when you talk through a fan. Have you ever done that before? It sounds robotic. So that's kind of what it sounds like. So you can't really hear emotion, but I could tell she was being very upbeat for me. But I knew that she was also extremely happy to hear my voice. So yeah, I mean, it takes a huge toll. I tell people who are considering this line of work to consider a couple things. For, you know, especially if you're married, you have a spouse and children, that's a whole different another level of I won't say difficulty, but it's a level of how much do I want to sacrifice,
right?
Because you're going to miss birthdays and important dates and things of that. But it's easy for us. This is what we chose to do.
Yes, I see that.
You know, I mean, and it's a 3-time volunteer. You volunteer to go in the military, you volunteer to go to Airborne school, then you volunteer to go to Special Forces. So you've 3 times said, I want to do this. Your family really doesn't get to make that choice for you.
Yes.
And then we're gone doing our dream job, which that sounds odd for people to think, oh my gosh, you want to go, but you want to test yourself, you know? And then the whole part of it comes in, if you want to accomplish the mission, you want to make sure you're taking care of your guys on your left and right. So when I say I was having the time of my life, I don't mean that in a bloodthirsty or whatever way. And I know no soldier would, but I was having the time of my life. My family had no idea what I was doing, where I was, what was going on, unless I was able to get a hold of them. And yeah, it was years, actually about 2 years after I retired, my mother told me, hey, on your 4th, 5th, 6th trip, I was really having an issue with you doing this, you know. But that just shows her resiliency, because she never once let me know that. Because I would have, I'm sure, I hope that I would have dropped it, you know, as soon as I had found out that it was causing her some issues as well.
Well, that's a testament to your mom and your father. Yeah, but they were committed, as you said, a military lineage, and so they were committed to service. Okay, so we're now in Baghdad.
Yep. So I'm going to kind of just breeze past these, because that was my second trip to Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
I did 5 more.
Oh my.
So I altogether, I looked up when I retired. I looked it up, and there's guys that I work with, or that are friends of mine that are just retiring from the force. They probably have twice this amount of deployment time, but I had about 60 months. So right at 5 years. That wasn't all concurrent, but it was broken up. So and what I do want to touch on is the guy that started the going to what am I trying to say? The guy that said, "Hey, I want to go to Special Forces Assessment and Selection,"
Mm-hmm.
and came to God first and said, "Hey, Lord, I really want to go do this. If you don't want me to do this, you're going to have to show me, because I'm going to give everything I got to do it." In that time, there was a lot of stuff that happened. A lot of deployments, a lot of stress, and and bad things happening to friends and things of that nature. But what happened with me, that I stick with, is my relationship with Christ widened, and I was the one that moved away, not him. And in the military, there's a kind of an ethos of, if you're a warrior, you're a fighter, and you drink heavy, and all that sort of stuff. And for whatever reason, I bought into that. And when I did, I kind of found that consuming who I was. If you would have met me, Megan, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have told you that I wouldn't have told you first that I was a husband or a dad or a Christian. I would have told you I'm a Green Beret, because that was me. That was what I
That was your identity.
identified as. And that was my sense of self. This is what I am. And years, I'm sure that I hurt a lot of people, because I just was living very selfishly and for myself. So that, go ahead. I know you want to ask something.
No, I'm trying to stay with it, kind of a timeline too, is that, so you did marry during this season?
Yes. So let me back up. I got to 5th group in 2000, the end of 2000. I left 5th group in the summer of 2011. In between that time, I was married, and my wife, my ex, now, I have to give her credit with that. I went through multiple deployments, but things just don't work out for whatever reason. And I mean, really, in a nutshell, I was a basket case, to be quite honest with you. So I knew I needed to work on myself.
As you said, you were, take a relationship aside, that you personally were enmeshed and immersed into this lifestyle, and that was your commitment, so to speak. And so it's you can't be a master of both. It's a hard thing.
That's so true.
And so then that's where we learn from our experiences. And one of the things that I want to share in Unique Leaders is, it's best to, we learn from our own mistakes, hopefully, but it is far better to learn from other people's mistakes.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So that's one of the things I want people to glean from, people's stories, is what they have gone through, what their experiences are. And with your transparency too, James, is so appreciative, because that is how people are going to really understand. The commitment that people make when they join the military, what it takes a hold. And of course, we're all human. And, I was thinking about my lifestyle, so to speak, on the road as a salesperson for, national sales and marketing. And not putting any comparison to being in the service, but on the other side of the coin, it was a lifestyle. And not necessarily a healthy one. So you get immersed into that lifestyle.
Right. Yes. Yes. 100%.
Yeah.
And that sacrifice. I've been retired in October. It will be 8 years.
Okay.
And I'm still kind of realizing, military veterans, I think we all have, I don't know what it is, but we all have a thing inside of us where we downplay what we did.
Mm-hmm.
And as you get older, as you kind of like, you let time not condense that stuff, but let it just expand a little bit, you start beginning to realize the importance of what you did during your career. And in the situations, the timing that you were in and stuff. And that word sacrifice has come back a few times. I've shared it with, in fact, right now I'm mentoring a gentleman. He's considering to be a Special Forces soldier, and that's one of the two things I tell him is you're going to sacrifice, you're going to miss certain things, but going back to what we talked about families,
Mm-hmm.
he's married as well, and I said, you need to sit down with my wife and I, and we need to talk to both of you guys, because you're walking into something that she has to be committed to. I mean, the divorce rate within special operations, I'm sure within the military, is very high, but within special operations, it's 50%. We used to have a joke that's sergeant major is the highest enlisted rank you can get in the U.S. Army.
Mm-hmm.
So we used to have a joke and say, to be a sergeant major, you had to have 2 divorces and own a Harley Davidson, and maybe a DUI. So it was kind of a running joke, but there's a lot of guys that their marriages did fail. Mine right here too, because of doing that job.
Yes, and so you mentioned God earlier and Jesus. How pivotal was that in the latter part? Or when? Well, let me ask it this way: when did Jesus come into? You asked initially, and you obviously felt in your spirit that it was good, appropriate, the thing to do to join the service. But when did you? When did Jesus come more centrifugally focused in your life?
So it's kind of funny. I mean, I want to say when he took it away from me, when he took that one thing that meant the most, when he took it away from me, that's when it happened.
Mm-hmm.
I was having an issue with alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And the long story short is, because of that, and some of my other actions that I did, I was, nothing was taken from me. I never, nothing bad judiciously or anything like that, but I was removed from my position on my team to go fix myself.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. And so I left. I actually got orders to leave Fort Campbell, and I went to beautiful Fort Polk, Louisiana.
Okay.
Yeah. So, which we have a training detachment there that we assist other Special Forces units to go through training that they do at the Joint Readiness Training Center, which is at Fort Polk. So it's a big war games. The conventional army comes in, and some facet of special operations will come in. And that's what we did there. We facilitated their training for that.
Mm-hmm.
But in the meantime, because I had, well, for a lot of reasons, I don't want to put it on, I was so busy that I didn't take care of myself spiritually. That's a cop out.
Mm-hmm.
But I was able to step back and really start taking care of me.
Mm-hmm.
And because, probably for the last 5 years, I was stationed at Fort Campbell, and I was deploying. I am sure I was the grumpiest, just worst person to be around, because I didn't have the passion to do the job anymore. I was just there because it was a commitment.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want. I don't want to say I didn't want to be there, but I was tired of it.
Yeah.
I just didn't. I didn't have, pride was messing me up so much. I didn't want to say I need a break.
Mm-hmm.
So God did it for me. And he also said, I'm going to take the one thing that means the most to you, and I'm going to make you realize that it means nothing.
Right.
So I'm at Fort Polk, and I was able to really just start diving back in. And in all honesty, I was pretty much an infant again in my spiritual walk. I had to relearn how to be a follower of Christ. But man, those little moments when it starts clicking and he starts talking to you, yeah, I mean, I still think about it and I'm smiling right now. So it's definitely like, hey, good job, you're on the right path. And you just feel a peace about you that that I hadn't felt in a very long time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
but you were still in the service. You were there in Fort Polk, and you had, what you're really saying is you had the, not the quiet time, but because I'm sure you were busy, but you were not being pulled into foreign land and to all of that same environment that was familiar to you when you were in that lifestyle. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, I think, I mean, if it's so hard for me I still have an issue with packaging this verbally to explain to people, but all of the stuff that I built myself up to be when I was in fifth group and doing those deployments, I let all that stuff go when I did, have that wake up call, and my commander said, "Hey, we're not going to let you be in charge of this element. You're messed up, buddy. You get out of here." That's basically what he said in civilian talk. So, yeah,
I understand. I mean,
I had built myself up so much that it was I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. And it was nothing of the Lord. And I was not, willing to surrender myself to him.
That's the word that kept coming to me, surrender. But also your prayer when you first set out into this whole journey was you asked for guidance. So he doesn't just do, the beginning stages. If you open the door, he's with you with the power of the Holy Spirit. So throughout all of that. Yeah. So this was just that journey with your life, with he guiding you. So that's very powerful. That's very powerful. And so you, at that point, what year would this have been, James?
So I retired from Fort Polk in 2013, October of 2013.
Okay.
And, we got a pretty lengthy time before that to prepare for the transition to go from military to civilian. It's about a 6-month program that they lay out. When I say they, I mean the military lays out classes for soldiers to go through that. And I feel like I took it very, very serious, but at the same time, I knew I could always kind of fall back on, well, I'll just go do a contract job in Afghanistan or something if I need money. Well, that plan all went away when I met my beautiful wife. That's actually standing right here behind me, or in front of me, I would say, in the screen. I met her and decided I'm moving to Houston, Texas to go to school and to be in the oil and gas industry, to work in the oil and gas industry. And I had kind of put my feelers out to meet some people in the area, and that's how I met Brandy on a dating website of all things. So thank you, Match.com. That's right. But so I met Brandy, and she had 2 kiddos already who are my amazing children. And so that was kind of a new thing for me too. I was going from just me, always been me, very selfish lifestyle, even when I was married. And I had to learn quickly. And the Lord had prepared me too, but there was a lot of learning lessons really quick. And she laid the law down, like, this is what's going to happen, or I'm not going to be with you, buddy. So 2013 into 2014-ish, I left Louisiana. I was in Texas, Houston, Texas. And I'll tell you, here's a good one for you. So God knows how to humble people really easily. And I was still just rediscovering who I was. We kind of touched, or you touched on it early. When you go in the military, you're broken down. Basic training is there to break the self down and to build you back up as a member of a team, so that you don't put your needs, you put others' needs or the mission's needs above yours. Well, you gotta reverse that when you come back out.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, especially as I was doing that, and to be honest with you, I'm still going through this process now. I am rediscovering traits about myself, which are mostly all positive, that I have hidden or hid from my my colleagues, my brothers in arms, because I thought that it wasn't in line with that warrior ethos. You know, so
Yes.
so I'm still in and that's I think that's going to be a journey I'm going to carry on until I go and get called by the Lord to go home. But as I was doing that, I was starting to realize, okay, buddy, you still have a problem with alcohol, you know. So, but I was still able to keep a lid on it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was talking about humbling yourself. Let me go back to that. My first job, so we're grateful for, was in Houston in the neighborhoods there. They have these retention ponds all over the place,
Right.
and the retention ponds have decorative water fountains in them. Some of them have lights on them, and they shoot a pretty pattern of water in it. So my first job, you'd have to take the power off, or sometimes you'd have a ditch that had sucked up in the motor or whatever. I mean, it was not. Years ago, was overseas, spirit, doing everything, you know, as the U.S. Army Green Beret. Now here I am cleaning dead tilapia out of a stupid motor on this, you know, on this decorative fountain thing.
Oh, wow.
Let him know we're having some technical difficulties.
James, we're having some technical difficulties.
It's hard to understand.
It's hard to understand you. So we've lost you, actually.
Let him know to go off and then come back on.
Why don't you go off and then come back on? So these things happen. You know, I watch Rise and Grind most every morning. My dear friend Glenn Lundy, who is in most days in his studio, but a lot of days he's remote. Excuse me. And, you know, I'm watching this amazing feat of every day. I do this once a week, and every day, and how consistent. But there are days that he has technical difficulties. So it happens, guys. This is the nature of this, you know, audio video world. So we'll bring James back on, and hopefully that his audio can be corrected, because we were just in some juicy stuff to hear about. He's in these fish ponds in Houston, Texas. But I think the point was that this was not what he expected civilian life to be. And the word that he used that brought him back to that story was humbling. So it was bringing him to a reality that all of it wasn't adventure and what he was used to in the service, and the hard work, of course, and camaraderie, but that he was now back into life, and that it was going to humble him and prepare him for the next phase of his life, which he's in currently, because 2013 is not all that long ago, and he was in Texas, which is where he currently still is living. So I'd like to share that if you would, you know, just push that share button and share this out, because I'm sure that anyone who's listening to James and I are really riveted by his story of the internal peace of the military, and the internal peace of why does one go in, and then what happens when you're in. You know, I've interviewed other ex, and I was thinking Marines and so forth, but it doesn't matter, ex-military, and female and male, and it's very interesting of their whys and what brings them to it. But what the thread of it is, their commitment to it, and that's what James was saying, is that they have to take all of our worldly thoughts, ideas, dreams, goals, and bring those to the one common focus and force of what they're doing, which is taking care of this country and the world, really, because they're really on call for the world. Like he was talking about being in the farm in Afghanistan, so it could be a farm in upper New York State. It could be a ranch in Texas, but it's other people's worlds that we're protecting and helping, hopefully. So let me ask you, he's not there? No. So, so you've tried to bring him back in. Yeah.
Oh, there he is. There he is.
He's back.
Sorry, guys. I'm on a hotspot now. I'm not sure what happened. So
Okay.
we had a little crisis action planning there.
Okay, no worries.
We got it back.
As I was sharing with our viewers and our guests today, that you were going off and then you realized you were wanting to share about a humbling experience, and that brought you back to the fish ponds in decorative fish ponds in Houston, and that's where we lost you. So
Okay.
Continue your point of that.
Sure. So, I was working with a couple other guys when I was doing that, and I was low man on the totem pole. So this was another one of those. I look at it now, and it's a very visual thing. Of God was rebuilding who I was.
Mm-hmm.
So I was working for a recent college graduate, and a gentleman that had some issues and run-ins with the law multiple times. So I'm sitting there thinking like, wow, look at me, But I remember thinking, I'm so grateful that I have this job, and I'm so thankful that I know that I can go up. I know I can. I've done it before. I know I can do it again.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up, fast forward a few months, I got offered a job to come back to Fort Polk, Louisiana, and be a contractor, defense contractor that worked for those Army guys, the same job that I did when I was there. They worked for them, and they did a lot of the writing, the military writing, the orders and things of that nature for those special operations units that come in. So before we made that move, and I'm sorry, I'm doing a horrible time with my timeline. So I retired in October 2013, moved to Houston, met Brandy right at the turn of the year of 2014, December 2013, January 2014. And when you know,
Mm-hmm.
you just know.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, okay, this girl is the one. And we got engaged on Valentine's Day of 2014, and we still tell the story because her youngest, Jacob, or now my youngest, Jacob, he was 7 at the time. As soon as I said, "Would you marry me?" and of course I'm on one knee and everything, she says yes. She puts the ring on. And he says, "Mom." So it was like a real kind of funny, poignant moment, that here we're trying to have this serious thing, and then Mom gets called. So of course, the proposal was over with. She'd already said yes. She ran and took care of did her mom duties.
Right.
So that's something that we still joke around about. But anyway, that was just kind of I go off on tangents a lot.
No,
Megan,
but that's a very important piece, because you were not used to, I'm going to use the word submit. We're not used to submitting to a family dynamic. It was not part of your life.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So yeah, I mean, when you said the mom word, I mean, any mom knows that, it's like, call me Gladys, it's like that mom, right? And so that was new to you. And so this is a piece that you're going to intertwine and weave into your psyche and your spirit as life goes on. But I think that's actually very, very sweet and very appropriate at that moment, because it brought you into that family mode.
Oh, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
That's great.
So we got married later that summer, and so we're looking at August of 2014, and then I get the phone call from one of my friends at Fort Polk. Hey, we've got this position open. Would you like to come take it?
Mm-hmm.
And I was ready to go because I knew it was I was going to be making a lot more money as far as salary wise. And the kids, Madeline was in middle school and Jacob was, of course, in elementary school. So I knew we had a lot of expenses coming our way, and I was nervous about that. So and I remember thinking I'm going to be heartbroken if Brandy says she doesn't want to move here because this is a really good opportunity for us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway, we went down for the weekend. All four of us did, and we looked at 10 homes in one day. And to be honest with you, I could not tell you about anything about the other 9. I just remember the first one,
Mm-hmm.
and which was the house that we ended up living in for 6 years when we lived there.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, in fact, the kids still today, they call that home, even though they were born and mostly, well, a lot of their childhood, early formative years were in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
But they still call that home. So to Brandy and I, it was a way station. The longer we were there, the more we realized this is not where God wants us to be.
Mm-hmm.
So last year, and I'm sure a lot of families went through something like this last year, because we had COVID kick off and everything. And Brandy and I just kind of decided, what are we doing? I was working from home. I really hadn't been into the office in about 5 months, and I was still doing the job that I had been doing. And it was kind of one of those things of I remember us thinking there's got to be more.
Mm-hmm.
Now in between that time, though, there was quite a few things personally that had happened to me that God was probably holding on, saying, hey, if you drop all this stuff that you're doing, I'm going to let you go have some amazing blessings and fun. So I finally realized on January 29th of 2020 that I'm an alcoholic and I need to be done with drinking completely.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my day. 28th was the last day that I had anything to drink,
Mm-hmm.
until to the present day. And God willing, I'm never going to touch the stuff again.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one big, to me, it was a chain. It was an anchor that was holding me back from getting to go do what we're getting ready to go do.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second was I'd been in the military for 20 years. When you get in the military, you're pretty much told where, when to do things and what uniform to wear. It's very regimented for you. So I got used to and comfortable with that lifestyle. Brandy has always been a free spirit. She's got a very gypsy, hippie soul. I don't really know other way to explain it. And she comes from her family is a long line of entrepreneurs. Her grandfather, her dad, both self-made businessmen. Her cousin is a self-made businessman. So that runs in their blood. And I won't say it was an oil and water thing for us, but I had watched her in her entrepreneurship and she was killing it with her business. So I knew had she had something that I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, how am I, if we walk away from something that, from this area, what am I going to do to provide for my family?
Mm-hmm.
And that is seriously when COVID kicked off, is when I started diving deep and hard into the Bible. And I remember, just as the days go, March, April, May, I mean, if I go back and look at my journal, there's so much of surrender, just words that I wrote down and, notes that I'd taken. So when it was actually August 2nd of 2020, oh my gosh, we decided, hey, we're going to just sell this house. We're just going to see what's going to happen. We went to the hardware store. We bought a for sale by owner sign. And, in between that time, we had done a lot of praying. Lord, where do you want us? What do you want us to do? Show us your will. So he showed us his will very quick. What I did is I posted on our neighborhood Facebook group, hey, I'm having a move and sell. I want to offer it to you guys first. We just put the for sale sign yard in, and then I posted that. My neighbor calls me and he says, "Hey, man, a buddy of mine is getting ready to retire. He wants to live here. He loves my house. You and I are the only guys in the neighborhood that have the same builder. Do you want me to see if I can set you up a meeting?" Sure. So a week later, after a lot of cleaning that we did, they're in our kitchen and they accepted our offer from us. And here's another crazy thing too. We had a hurricane that came through, and the hurricane really did a shellacking to Lake Charles, Louisiana, which we're just an hour north of.
Okay.
And we were without power for 8 days.
Mm-hmm.
And we're waiting, sometime in between this is when the VA appraiser is going to come in and appraise our home. Thank goodness we didn't have any damage to the house at all. In fact, our whole neighborhood really wasn't touched at all. We just didn't have power. And that was pretty much throughout the state. So the day that the appraiser called us and she said, "Hey, I'd like to come tomorrow if I can, come look at the house." We'd already been without power for 8 days. And when you know it, that evening, the power comes back on around 10 o'clock at night. It stays on through her visit that morning. And then we had another small storm cell come in, boom, knocked the power out another day. So it was one of those things of, oh my gosh, there's no way we can will this. Just that we could not put this into play, and made all this stuff happen on our own. So yeah, so we just decided okay, God, we're gonna listen to you. And really, it wasn't, when I say we, it was more me, because Brandy she'd already let go. She was ready to go. Mm-hmm. And what we ended up doing, which I want to tell you right now was the best time I ever had with my family ever, is we sold everything. We got rid of that house super quick, and we bought a travel trailer and a camper and a truck, and we just traveled the country. We didn't get the whole country. We got about the southeast region knocked out. But our kids, they were reluctant to it. But then again, we had COVID going on, so we didn't know, are you going to distant learn? Are you going to be at home? Mm-hmm. We just didn't know what was going to be up in the air. And we kept thinking, why are we going to stay? Well, we, at that time, just have to stay in this house and basically not hang out with anybody. Mm-hmm. So we, it was tough on the kids, and especially our daughter. It was her senior year. I mean, I can't imagine now looking back on it. And I just recently gave her, thank you for this, and gave her some props over it. I can't imagine being 17 years old and being told by my parents, "We're going to leave all your friends that you met in the last 6 years. Yes. Say goodbye to them. You're not even going to have an opportunity to go to school. We're going to take you, and you're going to go travel in a camper with your family, out across the country." So it was tough on them too. And to be quite honest with you, that was another one of those things where God showed me something that, I didn't like when he showed me that, like, "Hey buddy, you still got some growing to do. You just jumped back into military mode of, okay, well, this is fine. I can do whatever," but you didn't think about your kids, Now I do think it was a blessing that we got to go do that, because it grew them and it grew us, and sure. They got to learn a little freedom from it. So it was a good, and overall it was a very good thing. And the most important thing, it brought us to where we're at now in Georgetown.
So, speaking of the kids though, what better time to, do that journey in COVID, because even though Louisiana might have opened up, so to speak, in, I don't know, maybe like Texas, May or June of last year, but still it was not the same. I mean, prom probably would have been canceled for Madeline, so it was a great time to have that journey, and she'll look back on that with amazing memories that will fill her life beyond what you know. So at the end of the Unique Leaders, and I know this will fit into where you are today, but I ask all of my guests a couple of questions, James. And it is predicated on the book, or the essence of the question is predicated on the book 3 Feet from Gold by Sharon Lechter and Greg Reed. And they're part of the Napoleon Hill Foundation. And I'm sure you're familiar on some level with Napoleon Hill and his Think and Grow Rich book that is, just a venerable book throughout the world of self-development. But this book is a fable, essentially nonfiction, and fiction rather, but it loosely is an autobiography of Greg Reed's life. But in the beginning, there's a story about this guy that was in the East Coast in the gold rush days, and so this led into the today's story piece. And he was there, and he was kind of had wanderlust, and the gold rush was going on. So he moved out west, and he bought a vein or a little piece of the action,
Mm-hmm.
and he started chiseling away at it. And he would go into town, and he'd buy his supplies, and as you do when you go into town, and you chat with everybody. And he was very frustrated. He was becoming very frustrated. He kept working at it, but then he gave up. And he then sold his piece of the action to this townie. And this guy goes out to the mountain and starts chiseling away. And in 3 feet, he hits gold.
Mm.
Okay. So if I named this segment, I would call it resiliency.
Mm.
And so 3 feet from gold. Now, Miss Sharon who is an amazing writer, author, speaker, and just thought leader, but also her field is not only emotional intelligence, but financial intelligence. And she has what she calls in the book, and then it goes into the Greg Reed part, the success formula. And it's your passion plus talent times association times action plus faith equals success.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not going to ask you to share all of those points, but what is your passion and what is your talent?
My passion is to serve. I don't know where yet. I've tried a couple of different things and thought I wanted to do them, and it's not inspired me to keep going with that, and I just don't feel peace about it. So I'm not sure where. My talent, if I have to say something right now, because I really don't know. I think it's just sharing my story and hoping that someone else doesn't have to go through the hard time that I did. That they can relate to it, and they can say, okay, which I know I gave the Cliff Notes version.
Right.
But I'm sure everyone can assume that, a lot more heartache and everything else that I touched on. So yeah, I think that would be just
Wonderful.
Serving and sharing right now.
Right. And that will, I call it marinade. That essence will marinate, and God will open doors and lead you to paths that are beyond your wildest dreams. You just have to, and you are. You've just taken the seatbelt off, and you're ready to serve and give hope, to share your story. That is wonderful. That is wonderful. I have a very similar heart thing, I would say, from my passion and talent. So thank you so very much for sharing, like you just said, the Cliff Note version of the James Smith story, the beginning of the James Smith story.
That's right.
That's beginning. Right. It's only beginning, and it's so exciting to see it unfold. But I want to reiterate in this last minute how brave you are to recognize that alcohol was standing in your way of enabling that rest of your life to unfold, and you've just made that decision to stop. And that is very admirable. And I know that there are many people, and especially I hear this all the time on Clubhouse, on speaking to other people on podcasts and the like, that, during this past year, people developed latent, horrible, tendencies, and patterns, and developing, they didn't want to build habits around, but they're now breaking them. So your story will help so many people, James, to not only military people who are making that transition, but other people just in life. So I truly admire you for A, your service, but B, your courage to continue on in a fashion that is going to help others. So thank you very, very much.
Well, thank you very much for your kind words. And thank you so much for the opportunity to come on and share.
My pleasure. So you'll be able to use this in your sizzle reel and everything else you're going to do. And so that's one of the other things that, helps, pleases me, that I can give you that little boost up as well. So thank you for, joining us today. So I will see you in a minute in the green room as I say
Okay.
goodbye to our guests. Okay.
Okay, great.
Thank you, sir. Sorry, we cut you off quickly. So again, thank you, James, for joining us. And truly, folks, if you would share this out, it really would, I know, touch others, because there are so many thousands of people that have been in the military, male and female. The Female Veterans Day is it's June 12th. And we're going to have a female veteran on who has a platform for female veterans. That's going to be in a couple of weeks. But it is such a integral part of the United States and the world, of our military, that is protecting all of us and working on our behalf and the world. And so, but they're people, they have lives. And so this was a close up and personal view of that. So I know that this will touch thousands. So please do share that out, and know that you can also find it on iTunes and all the podcasting platforms this Tuesday. We will post a replay, so you can also listen to it again and also share that out. It'll be up tomorrow. And then you can go to megandmartino.com, and all of these shows are on there as well. So you're able to go there. And my personal book, my personal story is there, Hope and Possibilities, Just Over the Horizon. It's never too early, as James is talking about, and it's never too late to create the life of your dreams. He touched on each of those points very succinctly in his journey. And he actually used the word hope, meaning without hope. Hope is, as Zig Ziglar said, if there's hope in the future, there's power in today. And we need to stay in today and work with today, because that is the seed to building your future. So I thank you again for joining us on Unique Leaders Live. And on Wednesday, I have the Megan DiMartino Live, and we will, that's Wednesday at noonish. And that also is on my blog. So you'll be able to have a replay of that as well. And soon that will be a podcast. So thank you so much for joining me. And I will see you Wednesday and then next Friday on Unique Leaders Live. Be blessed.